Hello everybody and welcome to a very, very warm Peak District. It's not that warm, to be honest, it's about 25 degrees, but I'm British, so that feels like the sun. That is being amplified currently by the fact that I'm having to have the windows closed in here because there's a really loud bird outside, which is distracting me. So I'm going to get this video over as fast as possible, which I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear. Anyway, this video is sponsored by Lumix, and it's a very sad video sponsored by Lumix because this boxed up is the 10 to 25. My loan is over. I'm going straight to the post office after this, and I'm going to cry all the way there because it's time to hand this back. I don't know why I'm just showing you a cardboard box. It is in there, and I'm going to miss it. I'll hopefully be reunited with one of its brothers and sisters soon, slash a production model that I've bought, not a pre-production model. Anyway, this video is not about that lens or me melting in the heat. This is about overused photography techniques, or at least techniques that I think are overused, and I'll be interested to hear whether or not you agree or whether you think I'm just being stupid and I need to get over it. So yeah, that's I thought I'd go through, I think there are 5 of them, and it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts. Starting with the first one, which is long exposures that include water. Now, I've seen plenty of long exposure shots that I really like. Generally speaking, as I've said before on this channel, I'm not the biggest fan of long exposures. And if I can sort of summarise why that is, basically the best impact I've found that a photo can have on me is that when I look at it, I feel like I'm in the photo. I don't feel like I'm looking at a photo, I feel like I'm there at the scene. I've never had that feeling with a shot that's a long exposure because my brain sort of subconsciously knows that that's a photograph because it couldn't be real. I could never see the world like that because the water's all blurry and the clouds are all blurred and smooth and stuff. And for me, that just takes away from some of the images that I see that are long exposures. Anyway, that's by the by, that doesn't really matter. That's just my personal preference, my personal feelings on long exposures. Nobody cares, nobody makes photos just for me. What I find though, is that more and more, I think photographers, some photographers, are seeing water and then going, right, water, get the 10 stop out. And I think that's a shame. I think that's a huge shame because that's missing the opportunity to even consider that like water ripples or waves or any sort of motion in the water could play a part in the story or even be the story of the image. People are just going, no, that needs flattening, take all the detail out of that, get a reflection or whatever, because that seems to be the in-trend thing. And yeah, as I say, I think it's a big shame. I think a lot of the time there's a lot to be said for water not being all blurry and long exposured. I think water can look fantastic when it's not like that, and I don't think enough photographers take advantage of that or even consider that. I think too often they just go for the 10 stop. So that's my technique number 1 that I think is overused. Technique number 2 that I think is overused, which again might be a controversial one, is panoramas. Now, I'm a big fan of panoramas. I've shot them in the past. I've even made videos about panoramas in the past. The problem that I have with panoramas is that I think too often people use them because they can't decide what their subject is. They see a mountain over there that looks nice, they see a mountain over there that looks nice, and they're like, I don't know how to get these in a shot, I don't know which to choose, so I'm just going to do a panorama and get both of them. And that's not what panoramas should be used for. Good photos are always about subtraction, taking things out of a shot to simplify it and make the message stronger. Not adding things into a shot, not including more stuff just because it's there. Panoramas thrive when you've got a scene that's just unbelievable. There are potential subjects everywhere, dotted right the way throughout it. It's just incredible. You couldn't possibly capture it any other way. That's when you should use a panorama because they're not that easy to look at, particularly on digital media. So panoramas in many ways are a last resort. If you've just got 1, 2 or 3 things kind of dotted around that you think, I'd like that to be included in that shot, then your composition's wrong. You just need to go somewhere else to find a composition. Or you take multiple pictures and just accept that they can't all be in the same picture. But too often I think people go for a panorama just to try and include as much as possible, when actually that just kind of dilutes the photo because around the amazing stuff is just lots of boring stuff. So yeah, I think too often that's when panoramas are used and not just when the stuff's epic and deserves a panorama. Number 3, always feeling like you need foreground interest. Now lots of photographers, mostly landscape photographers I think, always like to have foreground interest. And when I was in Anglesey last week doing my review video of this. I saw a guy who was set up with a long lens and he was, I wish I'd taken a photo of it. I don't have a photo of it, so it's quite difficult to explain. But basically there was a boat, so we were on an island, and between us and the mainland there was a boat, but behind the boat on the mainland was a forest behind the beach. Looked like a really nice scene, looked like a really good photo. There was a photographer there getting set up to take a photo of it with a long lens, lots of nice compression. Very nice. And I was passing by, so I said, oh, that looks like a nice shot. He said, yeah, I need a foreground. And I was thinking to myself, no, you don't. That's a great, great shot. Why would you need a foreground? Again, adding a foreground or adding anything can dilute an image. It can reduce the impact of your subject or whatever is in your image already. And yeah, for some reason, this guy felt like he needed a foreground to kind of complete the picture. It wouldn't have been a good photo if he hadn't have had some rocks or something in the foreground. And I disagree with that. Just my opinion. I've shot lots of foreground stuff before, or photos that include a foreground. I think it works great sometimes, but there seems to be growing opinion among some kinds of photographers that you need foreground interest, and that, in my opinion at least, is just not the case all the time. Number 4 is golden hour. Probably the most controversial one. I'm not the biggest fan of golden hour. I've said this loads and loads of times before on the channel. I find that sometimes, or a lot of the time, whenever I shoot at golden hour, the light overpowers whatever it is I'm taking a photo of. So if I'm taking a photo of mountains or the sea or whatever it is, the light becomes the story, not the place I'm at. And sometimes, a lot of the time in fact, I don't want that to be the case. I want the place to be the story. I want that to be the subject, that to be what stands out in the photo. And when you have epic light, sometimes you're not always in control of that. Sometimes the light just kind of steals the show. And if all of your photos are like that, then sooner or later they start all to look quite similar, because the subject is the light, not the different places that you're going to. That's just what I find. I know it's not what lots of other people find, but I do think that not enough photographers capitalise on other times of the day. And I'm not just talking about blue hour, which is probably my favourite time to shoot, but middle of the day stuff, like moody stuff, or even harsh light stuff can look interesting. It's just harder work. Like golden hour, it's like scoring with an open goal. Like, it's easy enough to do, you're always going to get good results. And I do wish that more photographers would kind of entertain the idea of shooting at other times. Because one, it improves your skills. You need to focus really hard on composition and story when you're shooting not at golden hour. And two, it would just vary the kind of photos that we get exposed to, because a lot of the time it's just golden hour stuff. And to me at least, yeah, that gets boring after a while. And last but not least is sky replacements. Now, as somebody who used to make a living from compositing and retouching, I've seen more sky replacements than I care to think about, to be honest. And I'm not a big fan of them in normal photography. And what I'm finding is that the standard of sky replacements is getting worse and worse and worse. They're getting more obvious as time goes on, which is counterintuitive, because you'd think that people are getting better at things like Photoshop or whatever software they're using. But I think it's just the fact that more and more people are discovering how to do it, and then they're doing it, then you just see more and more of them. And I just don't like it. I mean, why not go the whole hog? You know, if you're taking photos in Scotland of like Glencoe, why not just replace that with the Himalayas if you're going to replace the sky? I don't really get it. I'm not a big fan. And as well as being sort of very, very 2012, 2013, I don't know. I think it's a little bit disingenuous to be replacing the skies in your photos, unless you're telling people that you're doing that. But not many people do, and yet it remains very obvious most of the time when people have. And yeah, that's about it for the overused techniques, photography techniques that I see. If you've got opinions, either good or bad, on anything that I've said, please let me know. I'd be very interested to hear them and to learn from you. So yeah, that'd be good. Also, thank you very much to everybody in the last video who gave me advice on how to get the 10 to 25. Again, I don't know why I'm showing you the box. How to get the 10 to 25 purchase past Emily. Now, overwhelmingly, people said that generally forgiveness is easier to get than permission. In other words, I should just buy it and try and get permission afterwards. I like the thinking. It's not a risk-free strategy. I think if I was to do that and buy that lens without Emily knowing about it, I'd also have to buy some protective headwear. But yeah, certainly food for thought. I'm probably not going to attack that this week because, well, this new computer was last week's persuasion. So I think I need to bide my time. Still, this is very exciting, other than the fact that I'm going to try and upgrade the RAM myself, which I've been told is very easy to do in an iMac, but if anyone can mess it up, it'll be me. Because to be honest, I'm not even 100% sure what RAM is. Thanks for watching.